Peace, 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 y'all. This is Empress Coach Rena Nicole, and this is the AM Inspiration Show to wake that ass up. Period. Okay. With that being said, we are streaming live from all networks. Period. Now, the AM Inspiration Show to wake that ass up is to wake you up consciously, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, mentally, and also soulfully. With that being said, today's the topic is how to move on and let go forever. With that being said, check out these chill vibes, and we're gonna hop right into the topic in a few more moments. Period. So peace, 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 y'all. It is Tuesday, November the 1st. Yes, we are already in November, guys. And we are in November, okay? And it's Tuesday, November the 1st, 2022. Period. So, before we get into this topic about how to move on, there's this wonderful quote, and it goes, "Life always awaits for some crisis to occur before revealing itself at its most brilliant," right? And that quote is by Paulo Coelho, right? Isn't that a wonderful quote? Life always waits for some crisis to occur before revealing itself at its most brilliant. Okay? So keep that in mind, all right? So, because like we're literally when we think about moving on could be from anything, right? Okay. But since this blog is about sustainable relationships and just sustaining your life in general, um, moving on from relationships is one of the most difficult transitions in our existence as humans. And because each of us moves in our own, desirable ways and on our own journey within our own divine timing, the one truth that is universal, we all face this challenge at some points in our existence, right? Because one thing that we are not is alone in our suffering, or if you want to call it suffering, you know what I'm saying? So, literally, it was some research done that was discovered that on average, people spend about 18 months of their lives getting over breakups. Okay. Now, the good news is that although it takes time, humans are able to move on. And when they do, they leave behind lessons, actual tangible things, live experiences, and they learn ways to heal. Okay. Because eventually you do heal. You may if you look at healing like, oh, I got over it. Sometimes healing is not that. Sometimes healing is just coping, learning to cope with it, so you can move on with your existence in a healthier way. Right. So keep that in mind. So the number one thing that you have to do when you think about moving on is to allow yourself to feel. Um, Sometimes it's so hard to feel that something has come to an end because we're in denial, and we don't want to be in denial. And living through denial, or living through that fact that something is over is extreme. It could prove to be extremely painful. And that place to be in your existence, that you know what, this is just never going to work out for me. I put too much energy into this. I put too much love into this. I put too much thought into this. I put too many resources into this, and it's just not giving me the return on my investment that I desire. That can be very painful because that's literally putting a lot of things into it, and it just is not folding out for you in the way that you desire. So the best way to deal with the reality of pain is to meet it with compassion. Um, neither like being in denial, or the feeling of not allowing yourself to like ruminate in it. Okay, because when you do ruminate in it, it gives you the freedom you need to move on. You know, so we can like we when we show ourselves being kind to ourselves, and we treat ourselves like we like, say for instance, if you want to like have like a best friend. A lot of people don't have best friends. They don't really go down that route in this existence. But just imagine you had a best friend. How would you want to treat your best friend if they were going through something that's painful? So that's how you would begin to treat yourself, right? So you have to acknowledge that you're aligned with your present, and that this too will pass. I'm not getting all biblical on you. No, I'm not like that. Wow. Dun, dun, dun. So the one thing that I always discuss, I've been discussing this for years, I think 10 years plus now, is that everything happens in divine timing. It doesn't matter if Paula wants you to move on, if Bob wants you to move on, if Reginae wants you to move on, if Malik wants you to move on, if Quan Quan wants you to move on. Okay, because when you are struggling, after a relationship ends, the first question we ask ourselves is, oh my God, how long is this going to take? How long am I going to be feeling like this? When is this shit going to be over? Period. Dun, dun, dun. Unfortunately, there's no answer to that question. Um, it's all about the stages of grief, literally. It's all about your timing, and when you're able to move forward, get coping skills, and able to let go. It's up to you. Um, so for the people to say, "Oh, I would never hop into a relationship after I just broke up," they don't know that person's processing time. They're not aware of that person and how they move on from things. So it's easy for someone else on the outside to say that, where they're not on the inside. That person may have not been attached to a situation that much, so they might move on rather quickly. That person may have never really loved that person, so they might have already been dealing with that person in secret. So it may look like they moved on quickly, but they were already cheating or already being disloyal to their partner. So it may look like they moved on quickly, but it's been years that they've been with this other person as well, being disloyal and being just a real shitty human. Okay? So keep that in mind. That more so according to a study in the Journal of Positive Psychology, right? More than 70% of participants took a little less than 3 months to move on. Okay? So or see the positive aspects from their breakups, and to feel goal oriented, and like they've experienced personal growth. Okay. So unsurprisingly, it's around the same time, just over 3 month mark, that another survey said people started dating someone else in a real way, in which they are focused on the new situation more than the old. Okay, that's just a survey though. That's not saying, oh, because we took the survey with 150 people and there's billions of people in the world, that is accurate for the whole world. No, absolutely not. It's just some psychology stuff that I'm throwing away to give you some hope. Period. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Now, the point of like moving on, you have to recognize that your situation is unique because you're a unique person, and everybody's relationships are different. Now, the point of repeating Repeating the numbers is simply to emphasize that healing can take time, literally. Okay. So maintaining a patient and gentle approach to yourself is the best thing you can do, because you know what I say is no such thing as a bad day. Literally, we have moments in the day that can seem bad, and we don't have coping skills on how to deal with them. So it makes us feel like our whole life is bad. It makes us feel like our whole day is ruined because we don't have the coping skills to um, move out of that feeling or that emotion, and things like that of that nature. Because those moments in your journey are going to happen, no matter who you are, and it absolutely will get better, unless you hyper focus on it and you relive it. And mental illness and mental disease can play a role in why it wouldn't get better. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. There's so many different factors and nuances that can play a role in your moving on time. And it's not to shame anyone. It's not to say like, oh, because you have mental illness, you're going to take longer to move on. No, I'm not saying that either. Like I said before, it depends on who you are. It depends on how you receive relationships. It receives on your perception of reality. It receives on how fast you heal and bounce back. All those things matter. Okay, somebody else's opinion, guess what? That don't matter. Dun, dun, dun. So let's go ahead and move on to these tips and skill sets that we can develop on moving on. Okay, so that reevaluation is a thing. Reevaluating your life, and recognizing that those moments that you thought you would never have, you're experiencing one, and a breakup can feel like the end of the world. Okay, now, and like, project yourself in the future a little bit, and take those thoughts and feelings of being out of that feeling, and remember that. Okay, and just take it for now as a lesson from the past, because it literally is in the past. And like I've always said, if you're focused too much on the past, if you're hyper focusing on the past, then you're going to get depressed. If you no, if you're nostalgic, too nostalgic on the past, you're going to get depressed. If you're hyper focused on the future, you're going to get anxiety. If you stay in the present, you're going to be grounded. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the more you can look at our lives as fluid and not fixed, the more we can see our experiences in perspective, right? Because the end of relationships is not the end of our story, right? It's not the end of our journey. It's not the end all be all just because someone broke up with you, or just because you realize that someone just was not it for you. Sometimes you really got to look at people like, you know what? I love you, but you don't even love yourself or love me enough for me to stay around. Period. And of course, these people might try to flip the script. They're going to assassinate your character. They're going to defamate you. They're going to do anything they can to make themselves look good, because they don't have any integrity. They're not able to be accountable to tell people, oh, you know what? I fucked this person over, or I hurt this person. It was me. So they're going to want to flip everything on you so they can come out looking like they're the victim, and they was the one that gave so much time and effort to something when they really actually didn't do that. They didn't. They're just lying. And I understand that part of the relationship moving on can affect your timing on moving on, because you want to argue like, you know what, you're like, that person's lying on me. Or sometimes you just gotta let that shit go, let them do whatever they're gonna do, because that's what they do. They don't have any integrity. They don't have integrity. So anything else outside of that would be like, down, down, down. It would be like you're fooling yourself. Period. Okay. Now, whether or not we are with someone or on our own, no one else can possess the power to define our path, our life path. Okay, on how we're going to walk it, how we're going to live it. And if when you give your power away like that, and you don't have that confidence to walk in yourself and know who you are, um, it's like when you leave a relationship behind, you feel like, oh well, I don't know who I am anymore without that person, because you attach yourself in a way that you weren't who you truly need to be in that relationship, and you were who they wanted you to be, and now you don't know who you are. So the truth is that you are still whole after a breakup, You never become unwhole because you're with another person. So just like all these things is just a thing for you to keep in mind when you're in these relationships, that you don't owe anyone thing, especially not you. You don't owe someone you. And that could be extremely problematic because, like I said, you get in relationships and you lose yourself. You lose yourself and you don't know who you are, and you fight yourself, and you are wondering like, oh my god, or oh my god, like oh to the divine, oh to the ancestors, whatever you might like to call on, is that how can I move on from the situation that I'm still tied to? You want to know how you can move on? Is because you're still evolving and you're still growing. So when you are receiving in a place of receiving and reception, you're able to use your discernment, and you're able to differentiate what's good for you and what's not good for you. You're not looking to a partner or your friends to tell you what is and what isn't good for you, because people love to tell you what the fuck is isn't good for you. They love to tell you that you're doing something wrong, but they don't like themselves to look in the mirror of life and see that most of the time, while they're pointing the fingers outward, the finger is pointing at them to look inward. Okay, hello, is this thing on? I need a moment. Moments over. Period. Okay. Now, keeping the imagery of movement in our minds is a way of preventing ourselves from being caught in a whirlpool of an inner critic that tells us we will never be able to move on or feel like ourselves again, right? So, one of the best things we can do is silence that inner voice. Start reframing them automatic thoughts, okay? Um, because that inner critic, like that critical inner voice, it's a way to describe that low vibrational thought processes, like the negative, the decluttering of the mind, no automatic thoughts, right? It's like an internalized nemesis. It really, literally is. The cruel voice criticizes, coaches, and even pities yourself in ways that undermine you. And when you're up, it kicks us, and kicks us, like it kicks you, right? Like okay, so like when you're up, right, the inner voice inside of you, you know, um, it'll kick you. Or when you're like, okay, say for instance, let me give you a better example. Like if you're feeling up, right, you'll have an inner critic voice. So you'll have the we call it the automatic thoughts. That's what I like to call it, automatic thoughts. And when you're having those automatic thoughts, say for instance, if you're doing something well, and you have a thoughts like you're trigger warning, you're just stupid. That's literally you getting undermining yourself, right? And when you're feeling down already, you have always like, look at you, just look at how you're going. You ain't never gonna be shit. You just like this person or just like that person. That's literally kicking yourself while you're down. Period. Okay. So that's why I was trying to explain that. I'm sorry for the pausing. I just want to make sure that I'm always clear enough for people to take information and use it for themselves. So I apologize about going backwards a few times. Now, a lot of pain and suffering we experience after a breakup is literally us being victims of the circumstances that we're creating. Hello? Is this thing on? A lot of things that we say to ourselves, I'm going to go over a few phrases. It's like, I told you that he would leave you. You have nothing now. No one will ever love you. You will always be alone. You can't trust anyone. You should just forget about relationships. Have a drink, it'll make you feel better. Smoke some grass, it'll make you feel like you can't feel nothing. Just be alone. No one wants to see you right now. You're ugly. Now listening to those thoughts and getting caught up in that rapture of those internal dialogues can make the process of figuring out how to move on so much more difficult, because now you're creating an air of this bubble of self-effacing behaviors and thoughts, because these thoughts are going to turn into behaviors, right? So we're going to get more into that about how the thoughts are going to turn into behavior if you're not able to cope with them or move past them or reframe them. Okay. So that's important because excuse me, um, when you get to know the voice as an enemy, it really is like the enemy. It really is. You have to learn to separate it from your real point of view. You know, you just have to, literally. You have to stop that thought and just like, you know what? Hey, someone does love me. A lot of people love me. That person didn't love me, but I know people that love me. I see people that love me. They show me that they love me. They show up in my life as if they love me. They support me as if they love me. And that's definitely a way to reframe those thoughts that you may have so you're able to move forward. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. So you're able to move forward in life, right? So whew, you had to resist the common tendency to idolize the relationship because it's very, very, very common to only recall and focus on the wonderful aspects of a relationship. And I think that that's for me, like speaking from my personal experience, that's why I stay in relationships too long, longer than I need to, way longer after I got the signs that it's time for me to move on and not be involved anymore. Because I always focus on the wonderful aspects of a person or how they made me feel good, and I always think like, oh, they can get back to this. This is just they just having a bad time. They're just experiencing a lot of pressure. They're gonna get back to this, and they're gonna treat me good again, and they're gonna be nice to me again, and they're gonna make me feel safe again. I'm gonna be able to trust them again, and it's just a bunch of idolization that doesn't even matter. um it just doesn't matter because it makes it even harder for you to accept the reality that it's over, and it's equivalent to denial in the stages of in the stages of grief. I think that I experience denial a lot when it's time for me to move on because I don't like change. When it comes to relationships, I don't like to break up. That's not something I like to do, and so most people don't want to break up. I don't always feel like breaking up is the solution to everything. I do feel like that you can have sustainability in relationships by talking through things, working things out, being more structured, being more understanding, listening to people, being more receptive, and actually changing behavior, you know, on how you show up in relationships. Because literally remembering that there were struggles and issues in a relationship, it does hurt. It hurts really bad. But literally I wrote a post on Facebook the other day, like literally saying that sometimes we just stay in shit way past its due date. Like we owe that library book. It's time to take that book back to the fucking library. It's over. It's past due. We're not reading it anymore. We already read it a bunch of times. You know, we're going to owe money if we don't take it back. It's going to start our return on investment. It's going to bother our investment because then we won't be able to rent another library book. Take that shit back. Period. Before it bankrupt your ass. Hello? Listen, it can help you feel more resilient and resolved to moving forward when you recognize that shit was fucked up in that relationship. Hello? Letting go of a fantasy, right? So idolizing our partners or relationships isn't just something that happens after we split up. Okay? Because couples enter into their whole fantasy bond, right? It's a whole thing called a fantasy bond, and the illusion of connectivity that replaces real relating and genuine acts of love and intimacy. I see some people do that, like they just jump in relationships, like, oh, I'm going to move in with this person, oh, I'm going to marry them. This is my partner for life. God sent this person to me. Like, sit your ass down. You're living in a love bombing phase. It's fantasy, and when that bomb go off, it's gonna be parts of y'all everywhere. Okay, symptoms of fantasy bombs include relating as a unit, valuing the form of being a couple over the substance of making contact, falling into routines, lacking independence, engaging in less affection, and entering into dynamics of control and submission as opposed to equality. Hello? Hello? Is this thing on? Hello? Let's go over that one more time for the people in the back. Symptoms of fantasy bond can include relating as a unit, valuing the form of being a couple over the substance of making contact, falling into routines, lacking independence, engaging in less affection, and entering into dynamics of control and submission as opposed to equality. We are all humans. The quality of a relationship often deteriorates if real love is replaced with a fantasy bond. Hello. And if you're looking on how to recognize real love, go back to our podcast channel on iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Clubhouse, or Twitter, and Anchor as well. And go look up our podcast from yesterday, October 31st, 2022, where we went over what? How to recognize real love. Hello? Is this thing on? Dun, dun, dun. Now, okay? Because listen, the quality of a relationship often deteriorates as real love is replaced with a fantasy bond. Hello? And I'm like, why she keep repeating herself? Why she keep repeating herself? I feel attacked. I feel attacked. Wow. Oh, hell no. Okay, so the couple may stay together based on fantasy that their partner will somehow save them, or that image that somehow their partner is going to, put them in a better position in business because they're so beautiful. They have the model, or they have the actress, or they have the person that they thought they could never get. So they're going to do everything to keep that person, like changing how they look, changing how they treat their friends, feeling like they're above everyone else now because they got this person in their life that makes them feel like they are better than people. Let me tell you, is the fantasy bond can be real toxic. I don't even like to use that word on the AM Inspiration Show, but that fantasy bond is destructive and chaotic. And listen, so many things can come out of that. We just don't want to talk about that. Hello? Listen, the fact that they may split up because the elements that first drew together are no longer there. Most of them split up. Most of them start cheating. Next thing you know, people are poly. They get married and then now they're poly because they were somebody they didn't even want to fucking be married to. They wanted that image. They wanted that look. They wanted people to be like, oh, congratulations. That's so wonderful. That's so powerful. Blah, blah, blah. Period. Okay. Listen, we bring the straight hard facts here. If you don't like the truth, you don't like the heat, get the fuck out the kitchen. Period. Okay. Listen. Okay. Because when you're in a fantasy bond and the relationship ends, it's even harder to move on. Because it's like you're not only mourning the loss of the person, but that fantasy that you've created with that person is over. The fantasy dynamic can also lead us to continue to look at the person we lost on idolized lenses, like I talked about. I suffer from the fantasy bond thing, okay? Listen, even the people with the most relationships, culpable skills can suffer and fall into that fantasy bond, okay? Because when the fantasy bond is broken, we are more likely to mourn the end of our false sense of security, okay? And it's like, oh, when I was with them, I was so safe. The whole time they abused you. The whole time they demeaned you. The whole time they disrespected you. The whole time they disregarded you. The whole time they didn't listen to you. The whole time they didn't make you ever feel safe. It's just the fact that they told you they would do that, and you put in your head that was going to happen, and whatever behavior they gave you, since it wasn't the behavior you thought they should give you, you just related it to that. Okay? It's delusion at best. Okay? Hello? I'm trying to tell you, when you wake up from that shit, it's like, oh my God, this person was horrible to me. It was horrible shit. This is like, period. A whole bunch of that. Okay, so it's literally like the end of the real loving and relating, literally. Okay, because when we break up with somebody and we're willing to let go of that illusion of connectivity, we can find that we are far less devastated by the separation. Period. I was talking to my cousin and I was telling her, about the whole, this whole fantasy bond thing. And it's like, even though like you could be the person that breaks up with someone all the time, it's like after a while, it's like, damn, it don't even hurt no more when they come back and see your life. Like if you let them back in and try to work it out and they just do the dumb shit again and they like try to discard you, like that shit don't even bother me anymore. I've been through the worst of the worst. Like I expected you to do that. I knew you would do that because I know you. That shit don't hurt anymore. I expected nothing less. You come in, you want to work things out, yet you still behave the same, and then you tell me I never changed. is like a pattern of abuse. It's like a pattern of self-abuse that we give ourselves because we're experiencing this bond that tells us that we have to be with this person. It's going to work out. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to have the best time, and it just never ever seems to formulate. It never seems to manifest with them. It's always manifesting a cycle of the same old BS, a cycle of the same abuse that doesn't take us anywhere. Okay, so that conversation with her went very well because we were talking about breaking a fantasy bond, you know, with a former partner. It makes it easier and the transition more lighthearted to move on because you had to go through those 5 stages of grief. The 5 stages of grief can come in any form, can come in any number of ways. It doesn't come like, oh, okay, this is the 5 stages of grief, and you know, this is how it goes. This is how it's going to go. It's going to go like this. It's going to go like that. That's not literally. That's not how everything goes. Like, you know what I mean. So keep that in mind. That's just not how everything works out. It's not going to be like, oh, I'm experiencing this right now, and I'm experiencing that right now. That's not how it works. It works in any type of way that it works because it's like emotion based. So keep that in mind because you can be feeling denial, you can be feeling anger, you can do bargaining, you can be feeling depression, and you feel acceptance, or you can just like, you know what, I accept this, and then you can go back into denial. Then you can go into bargaining with them to come back to you, and then you can go into depression, then you can go into anger, and you can experience this all overlapping each other. You can experience this like, back and forth with each other. And like I said, this week we coming in with some heavy hitters because we was gone for 4 days, period. So we're going to come back in this week with some heavy hitters, like the 5 stages of grief is one of the topics this week. So make sure y'all tune in live so y'all can catch these topics and get these skill sets and develop yourself in ways so you are able to cope and move through life so you can be your most best version of your best self. And you are not out here looking like a damn fool because you don't have the skill sets to maneuver through life, period. Okay? Hello? Is this thing on? Now, one of the best ways to move on is one of the hardest ways to move on. Allowing yourself to process. And I don't really speak a lot from my personal experience anymore, but literally this topic hits home for me. As a Taurus sun, and a Scorpio ascendant rising, like that's not something we like to do. It's just like move on. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So processing feelings is definitely not a thing that I wouldn't say it's familiar for me because it definitely is familiar to me nowadays. When you're living in a healthier lifestyle and you're living in transparency and mindfulness and intentionality, you actually can process things better. But as far as my past and the experience that I've had with relationships, yeah, processing feelings and stuff like that, it's definitely not something I would like to do. But definitely, when you're having a breakup, you're definitely emotionally raw. So a lot of feelings can come up and they make you feel overwhelmed. And like we just talked about, that how that 5 stages of grief can come in waves because it's emotionally driven and bound. That it can peak and it can subside. It's just like ebb and flow. It's literally like an ebb and flow of feelings. Okay, so accepting that you are feeling these things is definitely a part of the path of healing, no matter how hard it hurts. Denying that you feel these things, being angry about them, bargaining, just the different things we just went over, and that depression and acceptance, like all those things are stages of emotion and grief. Okay. So treating yourself the way that you would, the way we started off the conversation, and giving yourself a break can help you to acknowledge the sadness, anger, or fear that arises without handling the feelings over to our inner critic. Okay. So that's like literally like, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to handle this, and I'm not going to give it to. I'm not going to give it to those low vibrational thoughts and feelings that don't belong to me. Okay. So a way that you can move forward is to talk about it. Like I said before, a lot of us don't like to talk about things because we feel like, oh, we're in that fantasy mind. Like, oh, if I talk about it, this person might hear me. They might find out that I was talking about them, and they will never come back to me. So it's like I don't want to talk about it with people that know them. I don't want to talk about it publicly because I don't want it to get back to them and I don't want it to never come back to me. And a lot of the times we just hide it because we're ashamed. And we don't feel like we feel like people are like, oh, well, you put yourself in there, choose better. You know, choose better to people is a form of gaslighting. And so many people, it's just like nowadays people are comfortable with saying whatever they want to say to people. It's the audacity for me. And somehow they think they're teaching people. They think they're teaching people. They think that they're enlightening others. And they're just literally projecting their own trauma onto other people. And it's just really sad and unfortunate that they don't, that the 5 stages of grief is irrelevant to them. Because they feel like their point is bigger than anything. That their presence is bigger than anything and that what they have to say is so much more important to other people and it's just so tragic and it's so unfortunate. So um it's important to find out a way to do that while you're grieving. Knowing that others are aware of your feelings will make you feel less alone with the pain. It could possibly help you heal, excuse me, because sharing your experiences with someone who's been through it, someone you can trust and offer sympathy, or someone who helps put you in a good mood, is a smart and unselfish idea. People who desire to be there for you, they're going to be there for you. People who don't desire to be there for you, they're not going to show up for you. And it's really that simple. Keep that in mind, okay? So, you can definitely, most definitely, I feel like the most benefit you can you like um have is to go to a therapy, and go to somewhere that's to someone that doesn't know you, that doesn't know your partner, your ex partner, and they can give you unbiased coping mechanisms to move forward. They can listen to you because that's their job. That's what they're getting paid for, and that's what they're there to do. Okay, and they can help you maneuver through your existence and through the 5 stages of grief and stuff like that. Now, something we don't talk about, like I said, we are the AM Inspiration Show to wake that ass up, period. Consciously, physically, emotionally, physically, financially, okay? Mentally and soulfully. Hello? Period. Now, something we do talk about is attachment styles, right? So, like people with higher self esteem, it's easier for them to move on because they experience like a less rejection and sensitivity and lower levels of attachment anxiety, right? So learning about like your attachment styles can help you impact your relationship and may help you make a sense of it on your own. You know, you may not need that person to listen to you. You may not experience those intense reactions, and it can help guide you to understand how you operate and why you feel the ways you do in your relationships. Okay, period. It definitely can just help you maneuver through life, right? Um, so attachment styles is something we're going to go over as well. We're going to break it down some more on here. You know, we talk about it a lot on Clubhouse. We have a lot of rooms daily. Look up our club, Sustainable Relationship. Look up our clubhouse. It's actually called a house. Two different things. You know, it's called Sustainable Relationships as well. Come through and support. Why? Because it's free. It's free 99. It doesn't cost you a thing. Coming through, getting free information to help your life better is definitely the wave. Okay. So, if you ever heard of Stanford University, they definitely have researchers that recently discovered that a person's basic beliefs about personality can contribute to whether they recover or remain mirrored in the pain of rejection. Okay. They found that individuals who saw personality as fixed were more likely to blame themselves and their quote unquote toxic personalities for the breakup. Um, they were more likely to question and criticize themselves and feel more hopeless about their romantic future. Okay? So individuals who saw their personalities as changeable were more inclined to view their breakup as an opportunity to grow, develop, and change. Okay? So they are also hopeful about their future relationships and are able to move on more with swiftness. Okay. And if you can stand up to your inner critic and believe in your own adaptability, you definitely can figure out how to move on more sustainably. Okay. Period. Point blank, period. One more time for the people in the back. When you learn to stand up to your inner critic and believe in your own adaptability, you can and will figure out how to move on more sustainably. Hello? Period. Okay. Now, um, The next one is embracing your self-compassion, okay? Because that's literally like your self-talk, your inner self-love, not to get it mixed up with self-care. Self-compassion can be the key ingredient into healing from a breakup. So if you pick all the variables that predict how people will do after a marriage ends, self-compassion really carries the day, okay? You have to keep that in mind, right? Because those with high self-compassion, they don't really have all those low vibrational automatic thoughts, okay? They don't really suffer from the nightmares about divorce, and they're less likely to experience that low vibrational rumination, okay? Because self-compassion, it has a greater impact than other traits, habits, and either practical details, okay? Woo! So self compassion involves acting the same way towards yourself when you're having a difficult time, when you feel like you have failed, or notice something you don't like about yourself. Okay, because it literally goes like this. Instead of just ignoring your pain with a stiff upper lip mentality, you stop to tell yourself, "This is really difficult right now. How can I comfort and care for myself in this moment? Like, how can I stop and do something to make myself, I know that it's relevant. I recognize it. I feel validated within my own self. And let me stop and figure out how to do this." That's literally what self compassion is, okay? So, three tips that can take you further in your life when it comes to breaking up or moving on is self kindness as opposed to self judgment, common humanity as opposed to isolation, mindfulness as opposed to over identification. People always want to diagnose shit. I'm depressed. I'm this and I'm that and I'm this and I'm that and I'm this and I'm that and I'm this and I'm that. Okay, I did a whole song for y'all because that's what it sounds like, a whole fucking song and dance routine. Hello? A whole song and dance routine that we give ourselves. So embracing those elements of self kindness as opposed to self judgment, common humanity as opposed to isolation, and mindfulness as opposed to over identification will help us embrace the elements to take us on our life path as we discover the tool sets even more, how to move on. Okay? So, a person like me, like, I live my life mindfully. I live my life in a mindful way. If I show up and people are not there, I leave. If I'm giving information and people don't show up for it, I don't give the information. If I want to, like, have something, share with people, I share it, and I move on with my life. I use my time and energy wisely. I'm not going to continue to put myself in places where I don't belong. I'm not going to continue to give people love where they don't project love backwards. I'm not going to continue to give people tips and tools and skill sets where they just don't want it. It's easy for people to be jealous of absolutely nothing. People feel jealous because they feel like, oh, you did it and they didn't. They feel jealous because they're too lazy to get off their ass and do it themselves, so they don't support. They feel jealous because you may look a certain way. They feel jealous because of how resilient you are and you just won't ever give up on yourself. So they feel jealous because they don't have the tool sets to do that. They need people to validate them. They need people to tell them that they are good. They need people to tell them that they have content. They need people to tell them all these things. They're not able to move on with not one single person supporting them. They're not able to move forward because they feel like they've done something wrong. And I'm not saying that people like me, we don't experience like, oh, well, people are not supporting me. Am I not good enough? Or, these automatic thoughts that bother your mind. No, they come to your mind. Everyone experiences automatic thoughts, but we just don't dwell on that shit. We realize there's something that's not from me, and I'm not going to feed into that. Like, oh, well, you know what? I thought that, but you know what? That's not true. That's not true because there are people that support me, and that's just what it is. There's people that always want to love you. People that's always going to support you. There's people that rooting for you that don't even know you and want you to win. Hello, hello. There's people that are rooting for you that don't even know you yet, and they want you to win. Unbelievable. Can you believe that? That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Okay. Practicing mindfulness describes as an incredible tool to help people understand, tolerate, and deal with their emotions in healthy ways. Practicing mindfulness medication. Okay? Why did she say medication? Okay, practicing mindfulness meditation then, because to me it's all medicine. It's a form of medicine to me. So it's been shown to reduce stress by teaching us to accept our thoughts and feelings without over identifying and becoming overwhelmed by them or judging ourselves too harshly. So, prime example, I just experienced a death in my family. I found out about it on Sunday. And it was like really, really, really my intimate family. And I realized this year we experienced a death in our family. And it took me out of here. It took me out of myself. And the first thing I said to myself after I cried for like a few minutes, I was like, you know what? I'm not letting this take me down again. I will not let me take it down. I said tomorrow, which was Monday, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to do my podcast. I'm going to give my children their day that I promised them. They've been waiting for months to do Halloween. And I'm going to give that to them. And I said, if I fall apart on Tuesday, I wake up and I fall apart, that's fine. I said, but for today and tomorrow, I'm going to allow myself to be more mindful, to regulate my emotions. And guess what? It's Tuesday, and I'm still regulating my emotions around that. I have not processed it yet. I'm not ready to, and that's okay. But I'm not, I'm not bitter about it. I'm not, I'm not experiencing those 5 stages of grief yet. And that's okay because I know it's coming. I know it's going to come. But when it comes, I'll accept it. I'll embrace it. But as for now, I'm living my life because this is what I'm choosing to do, because I feel like I worked too hard to get to where I am to fall apart all over again. You get what I'm saying? And that's not saying that I'm not sad. That's not saying that I'm not grieving. That's saying that I made a choice to stay in that loving energy, to stay in that lightful energy, and to stay in the energy that, it's out of my control at this point. There's nothing I could do to bring her back. There's nothing I could do to make anyone not feel sad right now. There's nothing I could do except for show up and be the light that I would want someone to be for me. That's all I can do, and that's all I'm going to do. And like I said, accepting that process, the stages of grief is that when I fall apart, because I know I am going to do that. This is my mother's sister. This is someone I grew up with. She was the baby. And I'm not making it about me right now. I'm just giving you an example of moving on and moving forward. That when it happens, because I know it's going to happen, I'm going to accept it. I'm just happy to have a support system around me that, that's looking out for me, that's mindful of me, that's checking in on me, that's like, it's okay, baby. We know it's coming. And when it comes, we got your back. You know what I mean? And that's just a great thing to have, that support system. So moving on and having a support system, it actually matters, okay? Because that support system can help carry you through a healthy support system, that knows that you may not process easy, you may not move on easily, you may not grieve easily, and just having people around you that know that and that's waiting to support you, that's waiting, like they're not waiting on their like on pins and needles, but they're waiting to like, you know what, we're gonna get our friend, we're gonna pick this person. We're going to pick this person up and we're going to lift them up high and put them in a place of, we got your back and it's okay. Because a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people are not consistent enough to be friends. A lot of people, they are inconsistent. They are not really nice people at all. They talk behind your back. Oh, look at this person. Look at this person. They're down and out. They did all that hard work and now they're down and they're depressed. And that shit don't matter either. But we're just going to, like, we talk about true life here and how people are, how they show up in life. And it's sad and unfortunate that people do show up that way. And that's just what it is. They show up that way. And then we start judging ourselves harshly because of how other people treat us. If that makes any sense? And that's the unfortunate part. It's really unfortunate. So with that being said, this was part 1 of how to move on. Tomorrow, we're going to get back into it with part 2. This has been the AM Inspiration Show to wake that ass up consciously, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, and soulfully. Period. Okay? So, with that being said, I am your host, Coach, Certified Empress, Rena Nicole of RenaNicole.com, Divine Intervention Show and Podcast, The Love Experiences, and TheCurve.net. I will check y'all out tomorrow. Come through if you want to get these tools to develop yourself more and to live a more healthier life, you know, and to be able to be your most highest self. You know, it's too much love out here to be hating on little old me. Like Nicki Minaj said, if you listening to these replays and you just listening and you don't like me, you got to be a sick ass individual. Period. Peace, y'all.